welcome to the Transformational Podcast, a conversation between brothers about practical ways faith is impacting our lives. We invite you to join us on this journey as we are learning to let faith transform the way we live. We are glad you are with us today and look forward to sharing our journey with you. Now let's jump in.
Welcome to the Transformational Faith Podcast. Did I do that wrong again?
You did. But keep going.
Transformational podcast.
Yeah. And we have people joining us all around. Are we going to keep going or do we want to
let's just keep going.
All right,
welcome to the Transformational Podcast.
All right.
I'm Chris. Is that right?
Yeah, you are definitely Chris.
The way you said it was like I said it wrong again.
No, you said it. You said it right.
Okay,
you're the pastor from Paradise, and I'm the Marine from Maryland.
Just making sure, guys.
And we're so
my
glad
wheels
you're with
are
us.
off, and we're not even a minute in. So, hey, I'm glad you're with us. Man, it's been a good week.
It has been.
Robert, what's going on in your world?
Well, so we did have Monday off, obviously for federal workers. That's like a national holiday kind of thing. But I spent the day on Monday doing like a work day at the church, and I did that today as well, doing setting up sound systems. And we got a pretty good setup going downstairs for what the youth are using now. We're transitioning them to another building, but basically upgraded the system they were using. Took that system, upgraded the system that someone else was using upstairs, our children's church area. And so it's kind of, for sound folks, a lot of work. And honestly, it looked like I've been working on a car engine for as much dirt as I had in my hands when it was all said and done.
Yeah, those cables get nasty, man, when they're sitting. Yeah.
Buddy, it was not good. Yeah. But then the week was, it was fast and furious. And I'm starting to realize I have this weird pattern of Thursdays I get home and it's like the day I crash. Most people crash on whatever, Saturdays, Sundays, or whatever. For some reason, Thursdays, I find myself on the couch for about a 2-hour nap before bedtime.
Golly.
Yeah. I think
it's after you go to Luby's?
No.
Just kidding.
I think it's the culmination of the week. Waking up early, doing my run, or spending time with the Lord, doing my run, getting into work. Got a great team. Got to tell them some fun stories this week. We still have some uncertainty going on if you're not paying attention to the news. So that's causing a lot of new leadership challenges. But the Lord is good. I had a great compliment here and there this week. We got to see a few things kind of break free that we were having a hard time with. So God was good. It was one of those weeks where you're like, you look back and you're like, a lot of work, a lot of like hard, like heavy work, but you could see God kind of move through it all. And, I can't complain, to be honest with you. What about you? What you doing?
Man, good week. Had a nice little event on Thursday night that I got to go to with Julie, which was fun. It was a pregnancy center here in our area that our church supports, and got to go to their gala with my wife. So we dressed up real nice.
Nice.
One of the four times we'll dress up nice this year. I'm just kidding. But it was good. It was fun. And then, I don't know if you kind of know my rhythm. I think you do now. Is that normally I try to have my message done by Thursday. I do a run through on Thursday and then let it sit and get the juices flowing. Yeah. I like to call it, put it in the crock pot for a couple of days, and then I don't look at it on Friday. I try not to look at it on Friday. Sometimes I can't help myself.
You can't help yourself.
I just try to let the Lord, begin cooking anything different in me that needs to be changed. Well, stuff started happening yesterday and was everything I could not to touch it.
Okay.
But it literally, like, I don't know. There might be this already. I need to look and see. I didn't think about this, but I need like Sharpies or dry erase markers in the shower, because I kept having these thoughts in the shower of things I needed to change anyway. So,
you know why I think that is though?
Because
I think I tend to find some of my greatest thoughts there. I think it's this moment in time where you have this weird opportunity where you don't have really anything else competing, and you find yourself with an opportunity to just kind of almost hear your own thoughts or hear the Lord trying to talk to you.
Yeah.
And I think this weird like sensory overload, or not sensory overload, but sensory kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I've come up honestly, I've come up with some great ideas for like what I'm trying to do at the work, or I've actually had multiple times where I can point back and be like, hey, that was a moment where the Lord really got my attention. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's
So
coming.
anyway, basically, um, got done, did my run through on Thursday, had a
Okay.
message, thought I had a message, and God said, "Hey, so you got the
Just
bones.
kidding.
You got
JK.
the." It was like, it's got the bones, but everything that you put on those bones, we're gonna take that off and we're gonna put something else on. So it was good. I was excited this morning. I was working on it to make those changes. But man, shout out to my amazing team that worked really hard to get the last message ready. And I had to basically say, hey, probably at least half of the slides won't be the same. So just get ready.
Poor people.
We're gonna change a bunch. So, but amazing team, Jessica,
Yeah, yeah.
Michael,
So do
Z
you do your own
team.
slides, or do they do their slides for you?
No, Jessica does my slides for me. So
All right.
that
I
they
gotcha.
don't want me doing my own slides. I did my own slides when I was in student ministry,
Yeah.
but they've got a certain look that they want and that they're going for, and so
Hey,
you know what? Let it happen.
I gotcha. As the leader of the audio visual team, I can appreciate that, and I'm
Yeah,
glad that you've empowered them, Chris. You've empowered them to do their job
yeah.
well.
Hey, let people who are better than you do the things they're better than you at. So that's what I'm saying.
Chris, that wouldn't leave
So
anything for me to do. So we dial that statement back
you
a little
don't have
bit.
to tell everybody that though.
Okay,
So
okay.
anyway,
Well, hey,
all right.
we are gonna do Jericho tonight.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're gonna bring the walls down. You know what I mean?
Walls fall down.
The
They
walls
all
fall
fall
down.
down. They
That's
all
right.
fall down.
So
They all
in
fall.
Hebrews, it's this kind of a fun transition in Hebrews because it walks through kind of like the I'm going to call it the genealogy of the forefathers of faith, and then it does Joshua, and then it takes a minute, and we won't get it. Maybe we'll do it, and we won't do it tonight. But in 32, it actually says, not to mention Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the other prophets. And so he takes
Right.
this moment to like kind of capture everybody else. So maybe we'll hit some of those, and maybe we'll hit them all. I don't know.
Man, I love the Gideon story. Maybe we hit that later.
Yeah,
That's one of my
no,
favorites. That stands out.
I
But we'll see.
all of them are like what do you call like character studies almost like
Yeah.
a lessons learned kind of thing. But tonight we're in Hebrews 11:30, and now we're talking about the Israel people of Israel have basically come out of Egypt. They're getting ready to go into the promised land. And in the promised land, they have wandered for 40 years. They haven't been able to get in there. Only Joshua and Caleb are left of the folks who were on the edge the first time, and they ran away scared. But now they're getting ready to go in, and Joshua's encouraging them and saying, "Hey, we're gonna go do this." And he gives them a bunch of different orders as they move into Israel, and we'll just pick up in 30. And then I want to capture a few things that I thought were just as I was doing some prep time, I thought were pretty interesting about the lead up to Jericho. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
talk about Jericho, and then we'll talk about what that means to us. But anyway, 11:30 says it was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days, and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God. For she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. And so, interesting.
Very interesting. Like, and a lot of reasons, right? Because I find it interesting that like just that statement, Rahab, the what?
The prostitute,
Like,
right?
isn't that
You can't
interesting,
read by
right?
it, right? You can't read by it.
Right. Right. They didn't try to mask it or be like, but she changed, right? No, and she might have, but the reality is they're reflecting where that person was in their life at the time that happened. I
Yep.
just find it significant because she is listed among all these other people who are people of great faith, not
Yeah,
because she
right.
had her life cleaned up,
No,
but
she
because
did this in her sin, really in
yeah,
reality. Like
yeah,
she had a moment, she had an encounter, and it changed her because she also then became in
yeah,
the line of Jesus.
yep,
But at this point, she was the prostitute, Rahab the prostitute,
right.
which is sort of important. It's a key point, and I don't know what you think about this, Chris. I've heard this said before that because they didn't have like Holiday Inns or Hampton Inns or whatever the case may be. The reason the spies may have gone and stayed with her is because it would give them some level of anonymity and a place to go.
Right.
And that may be why they were hanging out in her place. But that's what I've heard before. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was when you went town to town. Typically, like part of their culture was you were supposed to take in the guest in the in the center of the city, and so I'm guessing they couldn't necessarily just go to the center of the city. I mean,
Right? Because no one
there's
in Jericho is going to pull
right.
them in. That's kind of
No,
crazy.
so
By the way, they've just crossed the Jordan, and Jericho is, I'm going to just say it, they're freaking out.
yeah,
They're
they are
freaking out.
because
Like they're on
they
high
heard
alert.
about the fact that these guys, this nation, this group of people, they probably didn't recognize them as a nation yet, but this group of people, this people group that just left Egypt, right? News traveled back then,
Yeah.
especially on the trade routes and things like that. They're finding out, hey, the sea split in half and they walk through. So I mean, there's these rumors coming. So I would probably say there's some validity to that, Rob. But especially since they couldn't just go to the center of the city, they had to go to someone that they knew would open the door. And so, however it happened, God directed them to that person, to that place. For such a time. But I just find it interesting because I think so often we have in our mind who God will rescue, who God will use. You know what? It really, I'll tell you who God will use.
Who
Someone
is
who's
willing?
willing
Yeah.
to act in faith,
Yep.
to take the risk of faith. That's who God will use. That's doesn't matter your pedigree, doesn't matter your past. All that matters is, are you willing right now? Are you willing, like, to do whatever God asks you to do next?
Yeah.
And
Well, so if we jump
that's how she
into
ended up on the list, man.
Yeah. So we jump into Joshua 2. That's where she is in the story. So if you want to read along, that's where she is in the story. And it basically is the two men, they were sent out to scout out Jericho. And they went to the house of Rahab and they stayed there that night. But someone told the king of Jericho, this is Joshua 2:2, some Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, bring out the men who've come into your house, for they have come here to spy out the whole land. Now, Rahab at this point could have said, yep, you got it. They're in here. I know where they're at. But Rahab in verse 4, she'd hidden the two men and she replied, yep, the men were here earlier, but I don't know where they went from there. I think it actually says they left the town at dusk as the gates were about to close. I don't know where they went. If you hurry, you can probably catch up with them. But she had actually taken them up to the roof and hidden them under bundles of flax she had laid out. In other words, she hid them under some food stuffs that she was hiding. So the king went out and tried to find them. I'm not going to read all the verses. And essentially, the spies stayed there that night, and Rahab talked to them, and she told them, she said, hey, this is what's crazy. In Joshua 2:9, she says, I know the Lord has given you this land. That's what she told them.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. We are all afraid of you. Everyone in the land is living in terror, for we heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea. Yep, last week, made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings east of the Jordan River. Basically, they'd gotten a fight prior to this and pretty much wiped them up.
Yep.
And
hey,
nobody has courage.
Yeah, nobody's willing to. No one's wanting to fight y'all. Hey,
Yep.
something that's always in Robert, like, this is not a big theological issue or anything, but when I read scripture, sometimes I have questions about things too.
Yeah.
Like, wow, but Rahab lied, right? She lied about the men being there, and I've always thought that was not always, but I just the internal dilemma of, wait, she's lying, but it saved them and whatever. And I don't think it's a case for saying it's okay to lie because she wasn't directed to lie that we see there. And she obviously wasn't necessarily following God or trying to honor God. She was afraid of the people and God at that point, right? But I just want to be honest with scripture when I read it, because I think sometimes we read it and we're like, let's not point that out or let's pretend like it doesn't exist. But I read it and I go, wow, like she lied about it. God used it, but and I think God could have saved the men regardless, right? Whether she
Yeah.
told the truth or whether she lied, but yet God still spared the men's life either way. But it was I just wanted to point out that I think sometimes the what we read in Scripture, it's real life, it's real people that
Yeah.
face real dilemmas and they make real choices just like we do, but God can still use it as a part of his plan. At the same time, I guess I want to just say it is not a, and I've actually heard people make this argument before, by the way, is that if the end justifies the means, then it's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. God used it, but let's not even pretend like Rahab was in a place where she was trying to honor God or follow God, because
Yeah.
she wasn't. She was actually still pagan. She was
Very pagan.
right. She
And
just was afraid of this one true God. So this was not necessarily. This was really probably in alignment with her character at the
well, and
time.
she actually has a bit of she has a moment at some point. She has a moment because she gets to the end of her kind of her talking to the spies and says, "For the Lord your God is the supreme God of heavens above heaven and earth below." In other words, she finally comes to that realization, like, "Hey, your God's real," and it's interesting because it says the city refused to obey God.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating. She chose to obey him. Now, I'll be honest, Chris. When I see this, I kind of have more of a military mindset, and
That's fine. That's fair.
deception is the art of war. And
Yeah.
you never want to tell somebody what you're doing. So, like, my entire business is about lying, because that's how you win wars.
Yeah.
But that's me. Anyway, so
But I think what you said there makes a lot of sense, though, is that she had a moment, right?
she did.
And she had a moment where she recognized that the Lord God is supreme, the heavens above and earth below. She Part of their culture was to believe in many gods. They worship many false
Yeah, they
gods.
did. Yep.
And so she was going, wait, somehow your God is bigger and better and stronger than the ones I know. And so it was really recognizing, she didn't realize it, I don't believe at the time, that he was the one true God. But it was a turn in her for sure.
Yeah, and I know we tilted on Rahab, and everybody's probably like, "Hey, you skipped the whole 7 times around Jericho verse, the first one." Well, we have to kind of start here because it makes a difference because it is actually what leads up to walking around Jericho, marching around
Well,
Jericho, and so
yeah.
it is important in order.
And there's something really significant when the walls come down in
That's
regards
what I
to,
wanna get to,
yes,
yeah. That's
yes,
why we're setting
yes,
it up, and you're like, "Why are y'all setting
yes.
this up?"
Yeah.
Anyway, so they bound her by an oath to not tell anybody, and they bound an oath that they would, make sure they rescued her and everybody that was inside her house, all your family members. So they basically said, "When we come to take over Jericho, you get everybody in your house." Now, she lived in the wall of Jericho. I think that's significant. She lived in the
Yes.
wall of Jericho, and they said, "Don't go out of the house, don't go anywhere, or you'll get killed like everyone else, and make sure you leave a scarlet rope hanging from your window so we know where you're at. We'll come get you, and we'll basically bring you and your family to safety." And so that's the setup as the spies leave and head back to their people to say, "Hey, these folks they're scared of us, and
Yeah.
it's going to be easy." Anyway, so that's the setup. The people crossed the Jordan. Actually, they hadn't crossed the Jordan yet. Sorry, I made that mistake there.
Well, they crossed the
Um,
Red Sea before.
yeah, but not the
Anyway,
Jordan. So now
not the
they're going to
Jordan.
cross the Jordan, and they're
Yep.
going to go on the other side. And Joshua actually comes into contact with the commander of the Lord's army.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
That's probably pretty crazy. And so if that's a fascinating kind of moment because he says, "Who are you, friend or foe?" And he's like, "Neither." I am the commander of the Lord's army.
I didn't come
Okay.
to pick sides. I am the side. That's what he's saying.
Right, I
You-
know. Exactly.
yeah.
So
Yep.
anyway, he gives him this awesome battle plan. The commander of the Lord. He says, "All right, here's what I want you to do." It's in Joshua 6, verse 2. "I've given you Jericho, its king, and all its strong warriors. You
Pause.
go."
I have given you Jericho. past tense,
Yeah.
right?
All right, Chris, welcome back to the Transformational podcast. So glad that you're with us. I don't know where you went.
Oh man,
Yeah, so
technical difficulties.
frankly, I'm not even sure where we left off, but I do have a sort of an idea because we were talking about how the commander of the Lord told Joshua what to do.
Yeah,
And I said, I was actually on but the Lord said to Joshua, I've given you Jericho, its king, and all its strong warriors. And you'd pointed out, now I don't know if it made the cut or didn't. So if it did, you get to hear it twice. Congratulations, y'all. That God had given, like past tense, given Jericho, its king, and all its strong warriors.
right.
And so kind of interesting there.
Yeah, he's saying, man, I've already given it to you, which I just find it fascinating because they still had to go get it. There were still acts of obedience for them to receive it. And Robert, I think there's some things that God is saying to us. I've given this to you, but you're gonna have to do some. You've got to walk into it. You still have to obey. You still have to be faithful. You're still gonna have to trust me. There's some things that God is saying, man. This is my plan for you. This is my purpose. This is my promise. But isn't it Tony Evans who says you got to act like it is so before? Uh, uh, hold on. I'm gonna look it up because that's a
You
good
look it
saying.
up. While you look it
Go
up,
ahead.
I'll kind of keep pushing because it is a super fascinating strategy, a very interesting battle plan that the Lord lays. The Lord of the commander of God's army, the commander of the Lord's army, lays out. He says, "You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead of the ark, each carrying a ram's horn. On the 7th day, you are to march around the town 7 times with the priests blowing the horns. And when you hear the priests give one long blast on the ram's horns, have all the people shout as loud as they can. The walls of the town will collapse, and the people will can charge straight into the town." So Jericho being the center, almost like a center military point of that land at the time, we're talking some pretty impressive walls and ramparts. And frankly, the reason why it was Jericho at the time is because it couldn't be conquered.
Yeah,
And so God's battle plan was, hey, march around it once a day and blow a ram's horn as you go around it, and then do that 6 days, and then do it on the 7th day, do that 7 times, and then a big loud shout, a battle cry, and the walls are going to come crashing down. That's the plan. That's the plan.
yeah,
Chris, you said he's given us a promise. He says, you've been given Jericho, king, and his strong warriors. And so you got to go get it. And God says, all right, here's your plan.
yep. So here's what Tony Evans says, and I love it. He says, "Faith is acting like something is so, even when it's not so, in order that it might be so, simply because God said so."
That's
So
such a Tony Evans
that
statement.
is a Tony Evans statement. So faith is acting like something is so, even when it's not so, in order that it might be so, simply because God said so. I just love that concept because uh, he's saying, man, I want you to go in because I've given it to you. But here's the strategy. And Robert, here's what's crazy. It's not like he took a battle plan from the great Egyptians that were great warriors. He didn't take a battle plan from the who were the giants that they saw in the land,
The Amalekites.
the Amalekites. Right? He didn't go and say, "Man, we've seen some pretty good battle strategies."
No.
He goes and gets something that really would have made anyone and everyone look and go, "Joshua, are you sure you heard that right? Like, we're
Yeah,
gonna do what?"
better yet, now Joshua, who's got an army, like he's got a real army, and
A
he has to
real
go to
army.
the, because coming out
Yeah.
of Egypt,
Yeah.
right? They were a little bit almost kind of like a horde of people, but not really an army. Comes
Right.
out and he has to then tell the priests and all his fighting men, hey, this is what we're gonna do, and
Yeah.
this is the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
Man,
only
that
did he have to follow the plan, he had to convince other people, hey, you know what? The band doesn't get enough attention. Let's put them in the front this time.
so funny and so classic. Well, here's
Yeah.
my favorite part of this story is, aside from the fact that he put the 7 priests at the beginning of in front, put the band in front, and they played as they walked around. And he says, hey, we're going to do this 6 days. On the seventh day, we're going to do this thing where we're going to go around it 7 times and we're going to shout. This was actually Joshua's command to his people. He says, do not even shout, or no, do not shout. And he goes, do not even talk. Basically, he's like, not, and this is actually what he says, do not even talk, not a single word from any of you until I tell you to shout, then shout. And I think that's interesting. Like Joshua just went straight boss on these folks. Like you will not say a word. You will march around, you will listen to the trumpets, and you will, I don't know, think. Hey, have you ever been in the car?
God, I don't know.
Have you ever been in the car when your kiddo's like, Dad, what am I going to do back here? I'm bored. The TV quit.
Oh my goodness.
Thing quit. And what do you tell them?
What I did when I was a kid.
That's right. Stare out the window.
I was like, there's so much to look at. Look around.
Right. And so basically Joshua went straight dead on them. You're going to walk around this house and you're not going to say a word. You're just going to look out.
Yep.
Right. And so they did. They went around it 7 days, total, 1 time a day for 6 days, and then 7 times on the last one. And then Joshua commanded the people, and this is now we're down to verse 16, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed as an offering to the Lord. Rahab, the prostitute, and the others in her house will be spared, for she protected our spies. And then it kind of goes through all the stuff. And what's interesting is the spies went and brought Rahab and her family and everybody out with them, and they moved the whole family to a place of safety. What's fascinating is when the walls fell, the only part of the wall that did not fall was the part that had Rahab's family in it.
You know what I love about that, Rob?
What's that?
God will always take care of the righteous remnant. He will always rescue the righteous remnant. If you will be willing to do why were they spared? Because she was the only one who acknowledged the supreme God and was willing to not just acknowledge, but willing to do what they told her she needed to do to experience rescue. And she was rescued. God rescues the righteous remnant. Just do what God tells you to do. I mean, it's amazing.
Now, I have heard, and I just want to nerd out for a second, if that's okay. Yeah, so there is thoughts, because you're like, well, how did blowing the horns blow this,
Robert,
drop these walls?
If you're about to go where I think you're going, I'm pretty excited because I was going to ask you about this, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's resonance. I think it's sound resonance. I think the
sound waves, right?
Yeah.
Because they are now discovering the power.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, Chris, is in military aviation, we know this actually all the time. We can have an actual frequency that goes and actually breaks metal. It actually breaks something in the plane. And so we come up with dampening devices and all these other things to do it. And we have an entire, I'm not kidding, entire field of engineering to figure out how to dampen the frequencies that run through an aircraft that actually create fatigue and cause it to break. So now where my brain is at, these folks were blowing their trumpets as they walked around for 6 days, and they were literally cracking the wall. 6 days of cracking the wall. 6 days of already moving ahead to what God has already given them. And then on that 7th day, because they're doing the work, marching around seven times, cracking the wall. And the last one was the big long blow of the ram's horn, and the people yelled, and it finally just crumbled.
That's right.
Just crumbled. Yeah. And how many times...
That wall wasn't what it was cracked up to be after all.
Oh, my goodness. Look at you, man. I was about to make a really good life application point, and you come out with your crazy dad pastor joke. Well played. Well played. I was going to say, how many times do we feel like we're walking around the wall and nothing's happening?
Oh, man.
But we're cracking the wall.
Yeah, right? Robert, what if they stopped at 5, man?
Yeah.
What about the people who were like, man, this
is crazy.
We look like idiots. What are we doing?
What are we doing? What is the Lord? Is the Lord even moving? Like, how many times have I asked that question? Is the Lord even doing anything?
Well, Robert, what if they didn't actually do it the way God told them to? What if they partially did what God told them to do? What if there was partial obedience? Like, it wouldn't have worked. And I think that's another thing we do sometimes. It's like, God, I'm gonna do sort of what you told me to do, but I'm gonna do it in my own way. or I'm gonna go, a little bit down this road of obedience, but I'm gonna kind of adjust it to kind of fit where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, no, if God's asking you to go full throttle, and
Yeah. I think
trust
I've
the outcome.
Yeah, I think I've told the story here once, but I have a different story about. But I have a story about this one time when there was a homeless guy that was begging for food, right? And so God said, "Hey, feed him," and I didn't, and the Lord said, "Hey, I can do it without you." And so the next day I said, "Lord, give me another chance." Another homeless guy, different guy. And no, nobody was the same with me that day. I end up feeding that guy. And then for the rest of the day, the one pagan in our group, the like super duper doesn't like follow Jesus. Also, I mean, I love everybody. That's just who he was, right?
Right, right.
Spent the rest of the morning telling everybody what Timmy did. And
he was telling the testimony for you.
I didn't have to do a
Isn't that
thing, right?
crazy?
And so
That's
I look at
crazy.
this and Chris, I would never have thought that action would have resulted in that reaction.
Yeah.
Like that's not what I would have thought had happened. And honestly, if you'd have told me before I did that, I would have been like, that doesn't sound right. But it's interesting that the people the people of Israel are counted as faithful in Hebrews 11:30 because they marched around Jericho for 7 days.
Yep, and that was kind of the point I was leading to, but I forgot where I was going.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
No, it's okay. But I mean, that's the thing. And because
Yeah.
Rahab was faithful, she wasn't destroyed with anybody. And then because she freely welcomed the spies. And what's even more interesting about Rahab is that she ends up in the genealogy of Christ in Matthew.
Yeah.
And in fact, Rahab was the mother of Boaz, who was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse, the father of David, the king. And so, because of her faithfulness, think about how crazy that is, Chris. The prostitute of Jericho. All right. I mean, think about that.
Hey, who God used
is now in the line of David.
Come on, man.
Man, you can't make this stuff
Yes.
up. So, there's a couple, I think, points that we can kind of pull together tonight as we close. I think the big thing is if God's calling you to do something and it sounds like a stretch, I'm going to offer that I would just go through with it. I mean, Chris, I tell people this all the time. If I feel like God's calling me to do something and it doesn't violate his word, his character, or like who he is, if I feel like he's calling me to do something, I'd go hard into it. I lean hard into it. I jump at it because what is the worst that could happen, right? I could be wrong. But I could be wrong chasing after God, chasing after what God wanted me, felt like God wanted me to do. And so I tell people all the time, man, go hard after that thing that you think God told you to do.
Yeah. I would point out the fact that how did Joshua know what to do?
Yeah. He listened to the commander of the Lord's army.
Yeah. It was time talking to
Absolutely.
the representative at the time of the Lord. And I think a lot of us, man, we take time to talk to God, and I don't mean just pray and offer our list of things that we're asking God to do for us, right? Or asking for blessing, but do we go expecting, and we talk about this often on this, to hear from God? And the two questions we talk about often, and Robert, I've just seen so much in my own life.
I wrote it out this week several times.
These two questions. Yep. God, what do you want me to know? And I say this about all things. I said this just the other day about something my son was going through. And I said, God, what do you want me to know about this situation? And Robert, just as clear as I'm talking to you, I felt like God began showing me something in my life that I needed to know about it. And so then I was like, all right, so God, what do you want me to do?
Yes, Lord.
And I felt like God said, okay, this is, I actually don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to trust that this is going to work out. And you pray and you be willing to watch me work. Oh man, it just made me think of that passage that said, hey, take your place and stand and watch the Lord work.
That's right.
Robert, the Lord may ask me to do something and he may ask me to sit still, but whatever he asked me to do, in this particular instance, it's actually harder for me to sit and watch.
Yeah.
I wanted something that I could go in as dad and fix the situation and be hands-on and maneuver things. And I felt like I said, no.
Nope. Let me watch.
This isn't your battle to fight. You watch me work. And so I guess, Robert, my point is this, is that you may be up against a battle. There may be something that God's saying, I've given this to you. This is my plan for you.
You don't see the cracks in the wall. You don't see what the Lord's already doing, but trust me, he has given it to you.
But you will never know how to take it if you don't take time to sit and listen and ask him for instructions. In fact, you may mess it up because you may try to take it the wrong way, and you're going to feel like you're coming up against a fortified city, because you are.
Yeah,
And God's going,
it's logical to do what you thought
Yeah.
you're doing, and maybe
Yeah.
it's not logical to do what he's telling you to do,
Yeah.
and that's not the point. The point is to go hard in after him and what he wants us to do. So I think
Yeah.
as we wrap tonight, and we should go ahead and do that now, couple things for me, and then I'll pass it over to you, is I think as you read scripture and you read through what's written, you don't ever think that you have to like skip over things that make you uncomfortable. Don't think that you have to like whitewash that away, or let's not talk about that. It was written for us to learn. It was written for us to know something. And so in this case, Rahab the prostitute of Jericho, was somebody who had an encounter, learned who God was, and then actually became a key player in the genealogy of Jesus. And then you have this direction or directive to the Israelites to do something that was honestly probably a little crazy. And they went all in on it, and they got to see God work. And I think that's what God's calling us to do. I've seen it many times in my past, and even in like the last week, frankly, it kind of sounds like you had the same kind of thing. So as you're wrapping us up, where are you at, buddy?
So, Robert, I think I go back to just Rahab and just the fact that the reason we know her story is not because she had life figured out and she was raised in the perfect family with the perfect background. It's because she was faithful. But Robert, I just want us to remember, she wasn't only delivered from something, she was delivered to something.
Amen.
And man, we are delivered from something, and God delivers us to something, into something. Ephesians, he created us anew in Christ Jesus to do what? The good things he planned for us long ago. God has a plan for you. He has a purpose for you, and you just have to step into it and trust him with it.
Amen.
Thank you for taking time to join us today. Our prayer is that you are encouraged in your own journey as you let faith transform the way you live. If you enjoyed hanging with us today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star review and sharing our podcast with others. We look forward to discussing what God is doing in our lives in our next episode.